Don't make the $100,000 mistake being made by millions of Americans. In this educational video episode, I'm going to address why any method of paying extra principal payments against your mortgage is not the fastest way to get out of debt. If you don't understand this, you need to watch this video to the end. So my name's Doug Andrew, and I've been a financial strategist and a retirement planning specialist now for nearly 5 decades. And I've been very honored throughout my career to have authored thus far 12 books. I'm working on my 13th one. And I feel so blessed because they've been bestsellers. I had a New York Times, Wall Street Journal #1 bestseller in 2007 called Last Chance Millionaire. That was written for 78 million baby boomers in this country that I feared would outlive their money if they did not learn how to find an extra $1 million that could generate $100,000 a year of tax-free income for as long as they lived. And so it hit the bestseller list. But my very first book was actually called Missed Fortune because of the fortunes people miss out on when they simply don't know what they don't know. And I self-published that, and pretty soon I was going through 5,000 copies a month, and I didn't know that was bestseller status. It got the attention of who became my publisher, Time Warner, back then. And so they bought the rights to the book. They allowed me to continue to self-publish, but it was like my War and Peace version, okay? 550 pages. It had 4 different sections, which could have been 4 individual books, but I wanted to tell it all. So Missed Fortune, and in here I had 23 myth conceptions about money. But we went through about 500,000 of this book. The very first chapter, and this was at the turn of the century, was titled The $25,000 Mistake Being Made by Millions of Americans. Well, that chapter was read by, at least 500,000 people. What was the $25,000 mistake? And now this episode is talking about the $100,000 mistake. Well, it's because of inflation, the time value of money, and everything else that's been going on. So now it's a $100,000 mistake. See, back when I wrote the book, the average mortgage held by Americans on their primary residence was about $150,000 back then. And so I was proving in the book that if you had a goal of getting out of debt, and let's say your definition of out of debt was not owing anything on your house, okay? Now, that's not my definition of out of debt. My definition of out of debt for me personally is when I have enough money in this right-hand pocket, so to speak, that any time with an electronic funds transfer phone call, I can take the money out of this pocket and pay off my mortgage or my liabilities in this pocket. I am out of debt. My assets, okay, are liquid and safe, and they will pay off these liabilities instantly anytime I want. That's my definition. That doesn't have to be your definition. So for the sake of simplicity, let's say your definition is you don't owe anything. Most people think, or sometimes I think they've been duped into being told to make extra principal payments on their mortgage. And so the most common mortgage term, especially at the time, was 30 years. And so, those people are trained to show you a 30-year amortized mortgage, and halfway through in the 15th year, you'll still owe 75 to 80% of what you originally borrowed. Oh, what's that monster in there? It's the interest. And so you got to get rid of that monster. Interest is bad. And I'm going, wait a minute. And no, because people would quip. There's 2 kinds of people in the world. Those that pay interest and those that earn interest. And I would go, no, there's 3 kinds of people in the world. Those that pay interest, those that earn interest, and those who pay interest in order to earn more interest, okay? In other words, banks and credit unions, what's their greatest asset? Their liabilities. People go, huh? If a bank or credit union stopped paying interest, stopped borrowing, OPM. See, they thrive. Their greatest asset is their liabilities. If they stopped paying interest and borrowing OPM, other people's money, they would wither up and die. Banks borrow our money and pay 1 or 2 or 3% interest, and they turn around and make 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11%. They make millions of dollars paying interest to make more interest, okay? Now, let's just put it there for right now, and let's get back to this concept. So if you want to get out of debt and you think interest is evil and a monster, and you think the best thing to do is to get rid of it as soon as possible by paying down your mortgage, okay, they will tell you one of 2 or 3 ways to do that. They may say, well, send extra principal payments against your mortgage whenever you have an extra 100, 200, 300, 500 bucks, and do that, okay? And I often say, well, that's like saying, here, Mr. Banker, here's an extra $500 this month to apply towards my principal. Don't pay me any interest on that. If I want it back, I'll borrow it back on your terms and prove there's a need why I should have it. Why do I say that? Because the bank's not paying you interest on that money. And when you need it back, okay, when you need it the worst, it's the hardest to get. I've learned a long time ago, it's a lot better to have and not need than need and not have. It's a lot better to have access to money and not need it than need it and have it be trapped in your house and not be able to get it, because when you need it the worst, you have to go borrow it back and you can't qualify when you need it the worst. Or you have to sell the house. You have to sell the house usually in a soft market. And so you lose all that extra money that you put into the house to accumulate that equity. I like to keep the money over liquid and safe, earning a rate of return greater than the net cost of the mortgage. I mean, most of my life, I've borrowed money under 6%, but let's just say 6%. If I borrow money at 6%, and if I do it correctly, I can tax deduct that interest off my tax return. And in a 33% combined federal and state bracket, it's not costing me six, it's costing me 4. So on $1 million mortgage, I'm not paying $60,000 a year. I'm paying $40,000 a year out of my pocket. I'm getting the other $20,000 back in taxes because I get to write off $60,000 of interest. Does that make sense? I've been making 8% or more in my favorite financial instrument that I call the laser fund. How much more is 8 than 4? Don't say 4. It's 100%. Would you hire an employee for 40 grand that made you an extra 80 grand? Yeah, that's 100% return on employment cost. Would you buy a widget machine for 40 grand that made you an extra 80 grand? So see, I keep my money, instead of giving it to the mortgage company, I keep it over here in this pocket, compounding at a tax-free rate of return in my favorite vehicle at 100% more than the cost of the mortgage over in this pocket. So you do that, and so any money that you would be tempted to send to the mortgage company, or sometimes they'll say, let me show you something magic. It's a bi-weekly mortgage payment plan. Now, this is nothing magic. Usually on a mortgage, there's what? 12 months, 12 monthly payments. Well, they just say, well, if you pay half of a mortgage payment every 2 weeks, if you get paid bi-weekly, so you pay half of a mortgage payment every 2 weeks. Well, how many weeks are there in a year? Well, there's 52, and so that's 26, and you're magically paying an extra month against your mortgage, and you will shave off about 9 years off of your mortgage if you send in half of a mortgage payment every 2 weeks instead of one every month. Does that make sense? It's nothing magic, but you're sending extra principal payments to the mortgage company. I don't think that's the smartest way to go. Sometimes people are told, well, just take out a 15-year mortgage. Just bite the bullet. If you can handle making the 15-year mortgage payment, which is higher, then you'll get rid of that mortgage in 15 years. I don't care what method we're talking about. All of them are paying extra principal. So I did a study. And in my first book, I took a $150,000 mortgage and I said, okay, if you take a $150,000 30-year mortgage and you take the differential between that lower payment and the 15-year mortgage payment that you were willing to pay, plus the tax savings that you will achieve. Don't just enjoy those tax. Yeah, I have a calculation that shows the tax savings. The differential between the 15-year mortgage payment, which is higher, the 30-year mortgage payment, which is lower, and the tax savings, you sock that away into a laser fund, compounding in this pocket, you'll have enough money in your laser fund to totally pay off the 30-year mortgage in 12 and a half years. If you give it to the mortgage company, it's going to take 2.5 years longer, 15 years. Do you want to get out of debt, so to speak, 2.5 years faster? And you're actually using $25,000 of Uncle Sam's money instead of your own money to do that. Or another way to look at it, you'll end up with $25,000 more than you need to pay off your mortgage in 15 years. You'll actually be able to get out of debt 2.5 years faster. That was on a $150,000 mortgage. So, a few years later, because of inflation, doubling the cost of living in 10 years, that was at the turn of the century, I said, now it's a $50,000 mistake because the average mortgage in America a decade ago was $300,000 mortgage. Now the average mortgage in America is about $600,000. So that's a $100,000 mistake. If you are sending extra principal payments to the mortgage company in any form, by taking a 15-year mortgage or a biweekly plan or just sending extra principal payments, folks, it's $100,000 you're kissing goodbye down the drain. Other than that, I don't have any strong feelings on the subject. So folks, math doesn't lie. So then people say, well, where do I put that money where it's liquid and safe, earning a rate of return at least double what my net cost of my mortgage is? And I say, well, it's called the laser fund. And in actuality, I've had mortgages on real estate at 3% tax deductible, a net cost of 2%, and I've earned 10% in my laser funds net. How much more is 10 than 2? Don't say it's 500% more. In other words, on $1 million mortgage, I've paid $20,000 in annual interest and made $100,000 on the money that I didn't send against the mortgage. Does that make sense? That's how money works. That probably blew you away. Folks, if you want to learn more about this, claim your free copy of this book and you'll see how to get out of debt on your balance sheet, or in reality, if you want to just not owe a dime, you'll have enough money in a laser fund to get out of debt 2.5 years faster than any method of sending that money against your mortgage. So learn why and how. Go to laserfund.com or click on the link below. You contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I'll cover the rest of that cost. I do require a little bit of skin in the game, but I will pay for the book. It's 300 pages. This side is for you left brain learners who like all the charts and graphs and explanations. If you learn more by stories, you flip it over and read this side. This has 12 chapters with 62 chicken soup for the financial soul stories, one on which is really about mortgage and real estate planning. But this is about you and your brighter future. I don't want you to miss out on a fortune. In fact, I prove that if you did this on your home over 30 years and forward throughout your lifetime, it's an extra 1.3 million, 2.3 million, even more based upon how you understand money works and how you apply the concepts that I've introduced in this episode. So this is about you and your brighter future. There's also options when you go to claim your book to listen and learn, watch and learn, even schedule an appointment with an IUL specialist to see how you can establish a laser fund as a dream solution for retirement, for real estate management, getting out of debt, either physically or on your balance sheet sooner than later.